to get ahead, you've got to know where you're going, and you've got to ask. We had a very interesting meeting over my house. We had a woman who's done studies on women in politics and why there aren't that many women in higher level office. And she did a very systematic study and found out that women do wait to be asked. And even when they're asked, they don't think they're asked. Where the men think they're asked. So she told this anecdote. I thought it was very, very cute, and I'll sort of do it quickly. She talked about this one woman who was working with the mayor on a project, and the mayor said to her, you know, we really could use some help. There's some opportunities in city council. You know, maybe I'll introduce you here and there. Maybe it's something you want to think about getting more involved in. She didn't think the mayor had asked her to be involved and run for city council. Then she talked the story about a man she interviewed, and he told the story about how one evening he was waiting for his plane. He went to the bar, and he started talking about politics with the bartender. And he had this lengthy conversation, and at the end of the conversation, the bartender said, you know, you really should run for office. So the guy thought that he'd been asked to run for office. So, you know, women need to decide what they want to do and go after it. When Barack Obama decided to run for president, I can guarantee you if he had gone around to everyone and said, do you think I have the skill set? Do you think I'm experienced enough? Do you think, you know, an Afro-American run for president has a decent chance? We all know that he wasn't listening to other people to make that decision. So women need to put themselves out there. They need to ask for it, and then they need to ask for it consistently. And people sometimes give you those opportunities.
And I think that's a really good point. A lot of women over here are mothers. And I know that we know from experience that it works with our children. You have to ask them to do something before they're going to do it for you. So I think there's such a great similarity there. Philip, my question, you had brought up the fact that you made a transition from being at a job, you started your own company. We have a lot of women here who have at one time or the other thought about maybe starting their own company, or they have an idea that they're thinking of maybe starting their own business. What are the key characteristics that an entrepreneur should have? Because it's not for everybody. Something that from your experience you've learned that you need to have these skills to make a good entrepreneur.
Well, I think you've heard what some of those skills are right here from these ladies. You know, the self-confidence is really important. I would move that self-confidence meter up a little bit, and I would even say you need to be assertive, because you get so many knocks that, you know, you can't be somebody who takes things lying down. I'll just give you a little anecdote. I was sent to a management boot camp by Philips. This is before I started the company. And you're in this pressure pot environment for a whole week. They don't let you sleep very much. So I was there with 11 men, and I was the 12th person. I was the woman, and I was the youngest. And at the end of it all, there's an assessment. You assess everybody else in your class, and you have to stand up, and they're going to tell you what they think of you. And at the end of this very intense week, when it was my turn to stand up, they all huddled and they said, well, we've known how to describe you from day one. And I said, oops, you know, what are you going to say? And they wrote it on the board, pushy broad. And I was a little insulted. But then they said, no, it's really not meant as an insult. Because you get your way, but you don't get your way just by, you know, being obstreperous. You're very persistent. You just stick with it and stick with it and stick with it until you wore us all down. And, you know, when I think about it, that's really one of the things that all entrepreneurs need to have. There's so many ups and downs. You have to stick with it. You have to be focused, prioritize. You have to multitask. Especially as women, you need to learn how to multitask, and we all develop our own way of doing it. I think it's important to build a team around you that is complementary. So no one of us is going to have all the skills needed to be successful. So I'm a someone always espouses starting a company with at least one, if not two other people that will round out the skill set. I think communication and presentation skills are absolutely critical. The way you come across, the way you express yourself to customers, to investors, to your own team is something that I can't stress often enough. I think the ability to motivate and lead people and delegate, because there is just so much work to be done. If you don't learn how to delegate very early on, you're just going to hold the company back, and you're going to hold the team back. And in fact, as I think about all of these skills, they apply almost equally in the corporate world. They're really not that different. I think these are very general personality traits that we see in successful people. It's just that as an entrepreneur, they get a little bit more magnified because the whole enterprise rests on you, whereas in the corporate world, that may not necessarily be the case.
Great. One thing that has come up again and again since the morning, and a lot of you, when I had my conversations with you, you brought up the idea of taking risks. When you're presented with an opportunity, go for it. So my question for you, Hildy, you've made a transition from being a lawyer, you moved into another sector. How do we overcome that fear that we're leaving our experience behind? That we're not, and I think when you kind of talked about that, having a team in your life, what are the things that helped you to kind of take that risk, take that initiative of making the transition?
I think Lorraine pointed to it, actually, which is looking at any opportunity, not only looking at it as where it potentially take you from, a financial perspective, but look at how does it leverage those skills and strengths that you have. So it's not that you necessarily understand the domain, because as you've seen, from what I didn't understand all the domains. When I went to Broadcom, I had to learn 4 separate new industries that I basically didn't know very much about. But the skills that I was using were the skills I had acquired as a lawyer, the skills I had acquired as a CFO, the skills I had acquired as an operating person, and the skills I had acquired doing deals, whether it was acquiring companies, selling companies, doing alliances. So I understood that although I had to learn a lot from a domain perspective, and I had to learn how to navigate in a political organization, which had its own set of challenges, the basic skills were skills that I had. So I was taking a risk, but it was a calculated risk. I didn't go in to run engineering at Cypress. So it's looking at those things and being able to understand that you're smart enough, which I'm sure everybody in this room is, to say, okay, I can learn that. And to know where you can find people to help you, but also knowing that you are going into something that will basically leverage some of the skills that you have. And then you can learn. I mean, whether it's leading teams and understanding how you could build teams, or also knowing where you were in your life and what you needed. I had just run a turnaround, helped run a turnaround for 4 years, where I had taken on the personal responsibility for 250 people. I worried every day whether we were going to survive, whether they'd have salaries. When I did the next thing, I knew I needed a break from that. I didn't want to manage 250 people. So I took something where I was an individual contributor, I had a team, I worked across the organization, but I gave myself, I knew what I needed as well. So I took a risk, but I also did it in the context of where I was and also my family. Everyone today's talked about work-life balance. There's no such thing.